A lot of people that are starting a business, and they really, as I'm listening to it, I'm sitting there thinking like, what's the objective here? What does best case scenario look like? The truth is, adding value will never go out of style.
So this is my very first podcast. I'm Alex Guizzoti, and my guest is Brian Smith, a entrepreneur, somebody that's been a business owner, and also a prior military veteran. So thank you for being able to take the time to talk with me. I look forward to the discussions that we have today.
Absolutely, I'm excited. I obviously had lunch and got to know each other better and this and that, and it's always great to connect with people that are like-minded and people that are trying to grow, trying to do something. We're in two very different industries, but it's always interesting to see the parallels and the principles that apply across different things, being a sales professional, and I'm a sales guy at the core, and just always learning from people the best you can.
So you've built this company locally.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the backstory and being able to be with a larger company and to be able to accelerate and see growth and to have achievement. When did you decide that you wanted to branch out on your own?
Wow, that's a good question. And I had a great conversation with Bruce Hill, a good friend, yesterday on a podcast we did, that it's kind of who you are, DNA versus environment. And I do believe it's a combination. And, there was something, I don't remember how old I was, but I remember drawing something. I made a little book for class or something, this is first, second, third grade or something. And my mom, when she found out she had cancer, she was packing stuff up and sent me a bunch of stuff, and I came across this thing. And I remember doing it. Long story short, without spending too much time on it, it was me in a suit, and there was a sports car, and there was a big building, and I owned the building. And so I don't know where that comes from. It was just in there, So I do believe that at our core, there's DNA, I think. Mustafa is very creative, the lighting and the pictures and photography, and he's just supercharged. And some people that can draw and be very talented artists, that's DNA. I mean, there's no question about it. I'm going to screw up a stick man, I just have no capability in that arena. So I think you have that DNA at an early age, and then I think you develop it over the years. And to Bruce's point yesterday with our conversation, I think circumstances around you can enhance that and really help bring out the best in you. And I think it's up to all of us to really become self-aware. I'm terrible at some things. I got a spreadsheet that I got to get back to my accountant that's been on my computer for weeks,
Right.
And I'm so busy I can't get to it, but I'm doing all these other things, so it's a matter of, I despise that type of work. I'm not good at it, but I'm very self-aware of that, and I can own it. But I also know what I am good at, and I'm fortunate that I'm good at what I really enjoy. And I really count my blessings there, because I think when you find, it's been a process. I'm 44, and it's been a process of really learning what you like and really trying to position yourself over time to be in what I call your strength zone. I want to operate where I'm strong, and I want to surround myself with people that are strong where I'm weak. And that's where you get a good organization. So back to your question, we took the long way there, I guess.
Well, you're pulling your strengths together. And
over time.
One thing that I actually didn't know, and our viewers didn't know that we share, is that I actually got into medicine because my mother got cancer. And everything that burned inside of me, just wanted to know, how did it happen?
Right.
From a cellular, from a molecular perspective. I think you look at that one person that's a figure in your life, and you just want to put your arms around them like an angel and protect them.
Sure.
So in my mind, I dropped everything that I was doing just to learn the skill set and trade of oncology. I didn't know that we actually had that in common. So that's actually, that's pretty special. When we talk about being who we are as professionals, it's also relatable to who we are as people, right? So when people have vulnerability within them, it's natural that others are attracted to that because it makes them feel at the level instead of inferior. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's a really interesting topic. I've got a little bit of a theory here, and again, it's something that I don't really know much about. It's just been really relevant in my life that I seem to be. You know, I never really had a dad growing up. I had a sperm donor, and he wasn't really around, and this and that. So my uncle was a great father figure to me, and I had a couple. Keith Kennedy, one of my best friends' dads, was a great figure for me. So I was fortunate that I had some role models out there. But I found over time that some of my closest relationships, for whatever reason, you gravitate towards each other. They're people that had, I don't want to call daddy issues because I don't think I had any daddy issues, but ultimately it's a couple of my best friends. It really occurred to me about 3 or 4 years ago. We were at a trip in Buffalo, and that's where it first hit me. Like, none of us really had dads growing up, and we're all very driven, but you meet people that ultimately you bond with, and I've seen an extremely high level of bonding with people that didn't really have a great dad scenario. My ex-wife, very similar scenario, and we were very close. And so I don't know. It's something that something I pay attention to. I don't know if it's factual. Maybe it's coincidence. It could be. I could write it off as that. But it's something I pay attention to that I think there's human beings. We have energy, or we gravitate towards certain people. I think there's a lot of things that we just don't understand yet. That how the brain it emits frequencies. We're receiving frequencies.
Right.
I've met people that within seconds you just don't like somebody.
Yeah, it's that first 15 seconds that
Right.
you automatically pin them as one thing.
Right.
And it's either it's a pro or it's a negative.
Right.
And it's very uncommon, and I love that we can go this direction.
Mm-hmm.
See, the funny thing is in sales, and whether you're looking at Zig Ziglar or you're looking at Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about business being developed at 78% on the 10th and 11th attempt. So essentially, that first impression is so significant,
Mm-hmm.
but in sales, it seems that you're allowed repetitive attempts to be able to connect and build that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that as an understanding truth in sales and what you do?
I think ultimately one of the things I learned a while back in an organization called BNI, Business Networking, is that people buy and do business with who they know, like,
Who
and
they
trust.
know, they like, and trust.
And I completely subscribe to that thought process. And I think being in sales, in your business, you're doing multiple calls. In my business, it's usually one call. So it's a little
Different customers.
What's that?
One call, but different customers.
Well, one call with, for example, my background's in security. We haven't really gotten into that, but you drive out to someone, they're interested in the security system. You drive out to the house, you're going to be there 30 minutes or so, and that's your opportunity with the client. Whereas in your business, you're going back multiple times. You're calling on someone, regularly. So I think with what we do, you've got to make a very impactful impression in a short period of time. And I completely believe the first 15, 20 seconds are paramount. You better be smiling. You better, have some you got to build rapport quickly. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But I think in your business, you're fortunate that you get to go back and you get to develop that know, like, and trust. And it just ultimately, I think, obviously product matters. Obviously prices matter, and things like that. But I think in your situation, you kind of find out who your people are. And I'm a big believer that, there's some people that are just not our customers. I don't want negative people. I don't want someone who's lying to us on the front end. Tom, VP of Sales, we've had conversations about this. When we have customers that are lying to us, CPI is going to do this, ADT is going to do this, I don't even want them as a customer.
Right.
Because then they're going to be, you know what, they're going to do that? Congratulations. They're giving you a great deal.
And it's like a mechanism that you allow, right? Because it's one thing you give them, then they ask for additional incentives,
Mm-hmm.
and the next thing you know, you're either breaking even or you're lost on the account.
I'm okay with negotiating, but I would not lie to a customer, and I wouldn't expect anybody in the company to lie to a customer. So when customers are outright lying to us, and we can tell, and I've been doing this I know everything CPI says. I know all their pricing. Using CPI as for an example, because they've built a great reputation and brand here in North Carolina. But, at the end of the day, when I think that if I think someone's hardcore trying to win and they're okay with me losing, I'm not okay with that. Because I don't want them to lose.
Right.
I want this to be a win-win scenario, and that's really any relationship. Mustafa, videographer, I want him to win with what is created at the company. I want all the employees to get what they want within reason from the company, and I'm trying to get what I want from the company, and the company you got to take care of the baby. So I just think that when it comes back to, God, we took a long way around on that, but coming back to the original thing, it's like, I believe some people are not my customer. And I believe that there's some people you just don't click with, and that's okay.
Right.
It doesn't make them bad people, doesn't make me a bad guy. It's just, you know what? We don't click at this point in time for whatever reason. And there's certainly people that I get that I'm real big on energy. And if I pick up on a negative energy or dramatic, everything's drama with some people, I'm just going to be hard to find. I don't want to deal with that, because it's Tom Brady said this. He said, I've only got so much energy, and I'm going to give my energy, to my family and his craft and his team. And, I've pondered that. It's Tom versus Time. It's a great series on Facebook, but it's, that really resonates with me, because it's easy to feel like, man, I can take on the world and this and that, but we've all had those days where you're depleted by 3:00.
Right.
You just smoked. And then, usually when I'm feeling like that, I can look back and see, okay, this customer situation, or this employee situation, or, whatever's going on. And then I can look back at the week. Maybe I'm not listening to my podcast like I normally am. Maybe I hadn't meditated as much that week. Maybe I'm not in the gym or doing things that keep me charged up. And normally when I'm feeling like that, the first thing I'm going to think about is, let me think about the last 7 days. And normally I'm off my game,
So we have a lot of people that are going to be tuning in that own businesses or that are regional sales managers in the company. Mm-hmm. First thing they're looking at is customer acquisition. Mm-hmm. Everybody right now should have a good percentage on retention of clients, mm-hmm. but how many people are actually out there getting new clients, prospecting the way that they should? What are your thoughts on that?
Customer acquisition, first off, sales is the oldest profession in the world. And some people think it's something else, but that's actually sales as well. It's a subset of sales. I won't go into that. But customer acquisition, I think ultimately what you have is, the way I look at it is, you have hunting and you have farming. And when I first started iWatch Security, I had to go hunting.
Right. And
being in sales, maybe not as much necessarily in the professional world. I shouldn't say the professional world, but you're in the industry. It's, typically you're going to get salaries and this and that. When I started off in sales, I was just a young, hungry kid with no college, and I went into straight commission sales. And so, if you want to eat, you got to sell something. And so, fortunately, back then, there was telemarketing leads when that was still, relevant. But I think being in sales, long story short, is you have to go out and hunt. You have to kill something. You have to bring it home so you can eat that day or that week. But I think as a sales professional, in what I've developed over time, I haven't knocked doors, I haven't cold called, I haven't done any of that in a long time.
I do know that you network a lot.
Sure.
Your social media presence is growing, and I think that in itself it's associating yourself with others in your brand. So I would say that you being the leader of the company, I think that definitely does help your sales department.
Well, I agree with that. In terms of, and again, I'm not doing a lot of sales nowadays, but ultimately, being sales, you go out, you hunt, you kill it, and that's that hardcore sales, right? But then you also start planting seeds. You also start networking.
Right.
You start building that brand. Us doing this podcast isn't going to create a security install for me tomorrow. Yeah, it might, but it's unlikely.
Maybe 2, 3.
Yeah, I'll take it. Feel free to call. But I think it's a long-term thing that you get to know someone. I did an install recently with a really sharp couple that own a real estate company. I've known her for almost a decade. and we were in business networking, and we'd never really done business or this and that, but finally we got the opportunity. And to me, that came from a decade of farming. You know, I know her well, she knows me well, and I think it just took time for the know, like, and trust to hit that level. And so, you know, I couldn't have paid my bills in 2011 with that.
To our real estate friends, this is definitely your segment.
Right up their alley.
Right up their alley. It's that farming mentality,
Right.
nurturing those relationships. When we talk about going on that customer acquisition, I know a lot of businesses have a limited amount of investment towards certain capital. So whether they want to invest in salespeople, information technology, marketing services, if they are trying to get a new client in today's market, what do you feel is the best way for them to get that new client?
Well, I think people make the difference, number one. So you got to have the right people. I just think that even if you're investing in the brand, they're going to call someone or they're going to request information. So there's certainly businesses where you can order online and you don't really need to deal with anybody. But I think for the most part, having a guy like you as a face of the company to a certain amount of clients, I just think that's really relevant. I think you got to invest in the right person.
So Brian, what other factors do you think are important to growing a company?
Well, there's definitely a lot of things. I mean, you got the basics. You know, a lot of great football coaches and coaches will tell you need to master the basics. And I think having a business, you got to have your business model has to be sound. You have to think it through. You know, I've seen a lot of people that are starting a business and they really, as I'm listening to it, I'm sitting there thinking like, what's the objective here? You know, what does best case scenario look like? So I think growing a company, you need to begin with the end in mind. You need to know what you're trying to accomplish. A great book for that is the E-Myth. You want to have your organization drawn out. What I Watch Security or Brand Ascent Media or whatever company you start, what does it look like in 2 years? What does it look like in 5 years? And I think you need to know what you're trying to accomplish, because ultimately, I'm going to use the security company for an analogy because obviously I've been doing it a long time. You know, you've got CEO, then you've got, you know, VP of sales, you've got operations manager, you've got lead technicians, you got office manager. You have all these roles within the company: marketing, salespeople, technicians, and you put your name in every single one of them day one, you know, because you're doing it all. And then as you're looking at your organization, you generate enough revenue in volume to where now I can offer an opportunity to someone over here for X amount of dollars a year, and their name goes in this bubble, and I'm not in that bubble anymore. And you literally work your way out of the bubbles to where ultimately you're building the organization. It's just different names are in there instead of Brian Smith now. And you work your way out of the organization to where you are the true CEO and you're dealing with high level things. And that's the goal, to build an organization. But you got to know what it looks like before you start. And so to me, that's a real important thing, is begin with the end in mind, know what you're trying to accomplish. And, you know, E-Myth, you've got roles and responsibilities for all of those bubbles, and do your best to communicate. And this is where one of my weaknesses over the years is I'm perfectly capable and happy shooting from the hip. But in terms of growing an organization, that's been a weakness for me in the past, because not everybody's going to shoot from the hip like I do. I don't need a high level of detail to get in there and jump in there and go at it aggressively and figure it out. A lot of people need structure. Like, they need to know exactly what's going on and this and that.
Stay inside the box.
Yeah, well, I think they need a more of a roadmap than
Right.
I do, and everybody's different. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that I built a business based on having a bunch of Brians that can just jump in and figure stuff out and learn on the fly and shoot from the hip. That's not a lot of people, you know, and that's why I did so good in sales at an early age. I got very little training. I got very little this and that, but I was willing to go. I was willing to you know, punch down in the accelerator and learn along the way. And so many people get frustrated because when people don't know what to do, they won't do anything. That's the average person.
It's that tuck and hide mentality.
Right.
whereas you should be in the fight or flight mode.
Right. And so it's my job as a leader to create the path for them, create roles and responsibilities, create these are all the things you're supposed to be doing regularly, and then, military terms, inspect what you expect. You know, you have a sit down regularly, and you meet with people, and you're, you know, looking over the job, looking over what's going on. You get feedback, and you know, Brian Smith can improve in a lot of ways. The employee can improve, and how do we make the company a better place? You know, so it's Gary Vee says I work for my employees. You know, and that's an interesting thought process. I kind of, and I get that, and I can certainly see where a business owner says they work for me. I mean, I certainly get that as well. But to me, it's harmony. You know, it's a good company, I think, is going to have harmony where you got people that are all flowing together. You know, you can't have the drummer doing something crazy, you know, and the guitar guy's doing a solo and the singer's doing, like, when it flows together, that's when you make sweet music. So that's what I think a good business should be, is everybody's on the same page, singing the same tune, going the same direction. And that takes work, and it takes the right people.
So one thing I really want to bring up, this is the hottest topic in the country right now when it comes to sales and company scaling. You have, not in this company, I'm sure these people are fantastic from whom I've met, but within other companies, you have toxic salespeople that are elite performers. But that negative energy seems to channel downward. It seems to affect HR, seems to affect internal affairs. Do you believe in removing that person?
I do. And it's tough. It's a tough decision when you got a top producer that generates a lot of revenue for the company, but if they're not being good to the customers, or they're leaving details out, or not telling people, or not sticking with the process, or they're a negative to other employees, I believe that guy's got to go. And again, everybody's got to look at their numbers and everything like that, but I just don't want that in my culture. I don't want to be around that. I don't want to have to constantly put out fires to keep X amount of revenue coming in, because I think I think it hurts the self-image I think it hurts the self-image of the organization. I think it hurts the morale, and I think ultimately you want to establish that this is our culture. And you could look at let's just take New England Patriots. I mean, there is no better coach on the planet right now than Bill Belichick.
Billy.
So if you get a guy who's not part of the team, but he's a superstar, but he's not really gelling with the team, and he's not doing it the Patriot way, you know, if Tom Brady can't get him a line and Belichick can't get him a line, they're gone. You know, there is no superstar, big, you know, individual that's bigger than the team in the New England Patriots. And like them or hate them, they win. And they do a great job. And I think that's where there's, you know, the fruit on the tree of that culture is, hey, it's about the team. If you're not part of the team, you're not going to be on the team. We don't care who you are. And I would rather create that culture and play by that set of rules than cater to the prima donnas that, you know, generally speaking, and again, Terrell Owens, for example, you know, when you got one player that's one player,
such
Hall of Famer,
natural talent,
such an amazing in so many ways.
Yeah.
But when I think of T.O.,
toxic. Teams won't touch him.
And you know, as talented as he was, it was hard for him to get a team, you know, because you're just bringing all the drama with it. And nobody wants that.
And how many chances do they give? You know, that's the thing, is that you can have a toxic person, but if you're actually willing to sit down, take the energy and time to deduce what's going on, you at least give the valid attempt that if you remove them, that you made the effort.
Sure.
And that you knew they were in fact a toxic person, not just a situational person that was toxic, or something was going wrong with the business and they were toxic. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you give, especially a high performer, because, you know, the 80-20 rule, 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. So you want to take care of that 20% of the best you can, and you certainly want to give them all the opportunities to get in line and be part of the team. But there's definitely, I think that individual, you're probably, if I was dealing with that person, I'm going to have to meet with them regularly and let them know that, hey, there's a bar here, and You're doing the bar over here in terms of production. You're awesome. You're doing amazing things. The ethical bar, the teammate bar, these things, you're below standard. So you've got strengths and you've got weaknesses, just like I do, just like the company does. And there's a level of, there's a bar over here that, you're not going to make it unless you get above here. No different than reverse those roles. You're an amazing teammate. You're an amazing person to have at the company. Everybody loves you, but you don't produce. It's the same thing. You got to go. We can't give you X amount of dollars a year and you cost the company money. So it's really a balance for an employee, and hopefully, that high performance person, you can get them to see like, you being deficient in these other areas are as bad as you being deficient in production. It's the same thing. We all have to have a certain level when it comes to these, KPIs, key performance indicators. We need someone's part of the team.
And when we talk about business ownership and taking control of your business, is it more important to build sustainability or valuation of your company?
I think it's balance. I think you got to, again,
And how do you do that?
I guess I'd have to think about it on a little bit more detail, but ultimately, when you talk about sustainability, I think part of that comes from, the first thing I think about when I think of sustainability is I want happy employees, because there is no good company without good people. So how do you have happy employees? You got to know your employees. You got to make sure everybody's making what they want to make, and that's a balance because everybody wants to make more all the time. So you got to make sure that people have opportunities to grow. So I think they get the mental portion of it. I think that there's the feeling part of a team or feeling part of something that's doing good. I think you got the mental part of it. The income and the potential for income, the potential for growth, I think is important to do your best to keep that in place. But I would say when it comes to sustainability, you got to constantly look at your business model. Because again, if we're talking sustainability and I have a video rental store, it doesn't really matter because, the internet's coming and you're Blockbuster. You could have been set up and stable and great employees and all that, but the world changed and you didn't change with it. Toys R Us is out of business. They went from a huge company to being out of business because they didn't embrace the internet and the trends that were coming. So, I think it's a balance. I think it's a balance of having the organization in a good place mentally and financially and everything. But then I think, sustainability in terms of leadership and the people guiding the company, looking at the trends and being ahead of the trends and not being a victim to the trends, but taking advantage of the trends because you got your eye on the ball and you're paying attention. For example, and I'm going to quote Gary Vee on this again.
Gary Vee?
He's such a great, gives so much good insight, but, Airbnb, this great, huge company generating all this type of business, or Uber, for example, it should have been Hilton that came up with Airbnb. It should have been some company like Yellow Taxi that came up with Uber.
Makes sense.
Gary Vee says you always want to try to put yourself out of business. And so I think it comes back to complacency. I think it comes back to leadership. Hey, when you're making $3-4 million a year.
That's interesting because you're talking about now staying within the same industry and expanding, selling yourself out.
Put yourself out of business.
That makes I don't think anyone's ever brought that up where it should have been the exact trend that was trending.
Right.
I look at other businesses like that. If I could ask you one other thing here, we talk about attention to detail and being critical of that, and I think that's definitely where you sell with your customers, so that you're just very intricate and delicate with your operations and your business, making sure that there's very little room for error. If we look at a conglomerate like Walmart that has, let's just say, not the best customer service, when you walk into a Walmart, things could be scattered, but it's that cost-effective approach and it's that branding globally that's brought them there. But then you'll look at a polar opposite like Express Clothing. People have walked out of Express Clothing because they don't know what the price of the pants are. It's not so much the salesperson saying, how can I help you today? How's your day going?
Mm-hmm.
When you're shopping for clothes, two things on your mind. Is this my style? What is the cost? Why do companies have such different determinations of their brands? Because they're both multi-billion-dollar companies.
Mm-hmm.
But how does that happen? And we saw that with Toys R Us as well, is that there are certain products that can't be matched on pricing.
So I think it boils down to, you take a Walmart, and we all know that, you go in there and there's some unsightly, yoga pants and, outfits that are regrettable. But when you go there, you're not going there for ambiance. You're going there because they buy those boxes of crackers in such bulk that it's such a great price, and that's why you're going to Walmart. I just think you know what you're getting. You know what it is. There's great value in terms of price point. Whereas an Express, if you're talking about the Express and the pants aren't, if the pants aren't priced correctly, and you're creating buyer's resistance from your process, and I think that's on management. To be honest, I'm looking at some things right now about iWatch security, making sure we're not creating buyer's resistance. If someone wants to spend money with us and they're our client, they're a good customer, I don't want to create any resistance. I want it to be easy. I want the process to be smooth and comfortable and cozy.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, so I think we have to constantly look at our businesses from the consumer point of view. We have to evaluate what we're doing constantly, and to me, just eye on the ball. One of the conversations we've had recently, I don't mind being real open about this, that we organically pull up really well with our SEO, but we're not quite getting the conversions to come through lately, like in the last 6 months or so. And so, part of what I'm doing is going back through that process as a consumer and looking at what the consumer's experiencing.
Right.
Looking at what our competition has done. Really just take a few hours to really dive in as a consumer. What are they seeing? Why are we not getting the phone call? Because 95% of the people we meet with choose us over the competition, so we just need the opportunities. So if we're not getting the opportunity coming through the website, what's the resistance? Or is the market changing? Is it people are just not shopping as much? And so that's where you just ultimately got to crunch the data. You got to look at it from the customer point of view, and you gotta know that you have to constantly reinvent yourself. There is no perfect company. There's deficiencies in all companies. We just have to constantly work to improve on it.
We deal with that a lot in medical sales world because we build the relationships, we provide the value proposition, but first we ask questions. We really want to get to know the customer, the physician, the medical team, because we're trying to relate it to the patient base.
Mm-hmm.
So in a similar synopsis of what you just described, we go through the same trials and experience, and what wavers is changing that mindset of what change really is. So if you could, in a perfect world, take that new security device and automatically install it into the house,
Mm-hmm.
having the patients or having the consumer's consent, but not having the consumer's consent, they would actually more readily accept that than to go through the process of, well, I like this, but I don't know. It's that hesitation, and it's how do we break through that barrier?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great point you bring up, and the first thing that comes to me is that we have to start off with the foundation that I'm here to solve problems.
Right.
So whether I'm talking to a doctor, I'm talking to the doctor about how to solve his problems, which a lot of times I'm guessing is how to solve patient problems. And so as a security company, we're here to solve problems. Walmart is there to solve problems. It's, you want crackers, you go to Walmart to get them. You look at Amazon, for example. People are going to do what's convenient. People are going to do what's a better price and better value. We all know that. So Amazon is Amazon.com because they figure out a way to do it better. And it's more convenient and it's easier, less resistance. You get on there and you sign up for Amazon Prime because you get it quick. We're Americans. We'll wait 3 months, and I'm getting old on you here, but we'll wait 3 months to go have your film developed, This is me to a T. Wait 3 months before you take your roll of film down to the CVS or whatever to get it developed. But when I take it, I want it back in an hour. Took me 3 months to take it down there. So, ultimately, we always have to think about it as a business owner. What problems am I here to solve? We have to be good listeners. What are our clients telling us? Because people are telling us all the time how we can improve. People are telling you how to improve your process and your product with their objections. If a customer's telling you, I don't have time, well, you're not, in your presentation, you're not talking about how little time this is going to take. If they say, well, I can't afford this, you're not telling them through your process and your presentation how affordable this is. So those objections and resistance, or the customers not buying into what you're doing, should identify a problem for you as a company. So if people are coming into the Express, using your analogy, and they don't interact with anybody and they're walking out, and you saw them maybe looking at something, well, why don't you come in like they did and look around and this and that? What do you see? And I just think that's people, you got to have your eye on the ball. You got to see things from the customer point of view. Put yourself as the customer, and what can you do better?
One of the last things I wanted to bring up in our podcast to close this great session off is I believe, and I firmly believe in this, that a consumer, whether it's in medical or in your industry, if they decide not to switch over, it's because they already understand what the end result is for them currently. So you can have a negative consequence with your current security system, but it's the fact that you already know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
When you have to channel yourself into a mindset of something new, the other side is telling you it's going to be better or more efficient or more cost effective. And you, as the consumer not yet receiving the product, you don't have that same mindset. So I could talk to a physician team about a clinical test that looks at a diabetic factor 10 years before a patient becomes diabetic, so 10 years pre-diabetic. But if they don't have that test in their practice already working for them with a patient that they can already think of, they're not thinking in the same resolution as I am. They're just thinking, this is great technology, we're glad that you're here, we'd love to build a relationship, we're just not interested at this time. And they're not saying no to the technology, they're saying no because they can't see the end result working in their favor. So I think that being able to give them examples, and that we've seen this on the internet a lot too, with people doing reviews. If you can give people examples of how this has been a success in other people's lives, or in their own home, or in their own business, I think that's where it becomes relatable, because then they can just easily see themselves in that position. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I mean, change, a lot of people are going to resist change. It's just human nature. And especially, I can assume, I've never really worked with a lot of doctors, but they're busy.
They're
clients
busy.
are there, everybody's pulling at them, especially when you have a doctor that's running his own practice. Now he's got other doctors he's dealing with. He's got the accountants and the leases.
Other physicians that have to get on
medical financing equipment. I mean,
Right.
you're dealing with so much that I think in that scenario, I think that it's one of those things where the pain of not changing has to be greater than the pain of changing. And I think the change happens. So if I know that, I'm going to give you a personal example, the pain of me not getting this spreadsheet back to the CPA by a certain time, that pain is getting higher every day. Because if I know if I don't do that, my taxes aren't going to get done. There's fines, there's penalties.
Consequences to the action.
There's consequences. So I might have procrastinated the last couple weeks on it, but it's in the back of my mind every day now, because the pain is getting great if I don't get this done. So the pain of making myself do something that I don't like doing and I don't want to do, the pain over here is getting so strong that it's going to force me to deal with this pain, because I don't want to deal with this major pain. And I think that's, with the situation you're describing, I think if you can communicate that, hey, doctor, the pain of you not doing this is going to be great versus the pain of making a change. And I think you want to communicate that in your branding or presentation, or help them understand that people will do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure.
100%. And I'm glad that we ended our podcast on that. Just wanted to give a shout out to Brian here. Please check out his company, his YouTube channel, his social media. Also want to give a shout out to Gary Vee.
Definitely.
And to Alan Gannett. Please read his book, The Creative Curve. You guys will be astounded with his mythologies on the economics.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for coming in today. This is your first podcast.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever actually been interviewed on a podcast. So
Look forward to the next one.
Thanks for the first. Yeah, we'll have to do something again soon. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Hello, this is Brian Smith, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more valuable content.